Hey, what's up, everybody? So the next episode is about uh, one of the real important fights in my career against Mushtaq Abdul. It was actually a do or die fight for me. It was going to decide whether I was going to continue fighting or I was going to actually change and go back to jiu-jitsu. So interesting podcast. Check it out.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. Enson, you're back in Japan. You're back in quarantine. How's it treating you right now?
Good, man. I got my companion here helping me take care of quarantine. It's our third day now, so I actually got lucky because I was supposed to quarantine in a hotel.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah, and then I think there was a little bit of a slip up that although I did come from Hawaii, my last leg was from Seattle, so they asked me where I came from, and I just answered honestly. I said Seattle, and I got to skip hotel quarantine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so 14 days at home, but so that's still 2 weeks at home. So
yeah,
on the third day.
Not the best, but it could be worse, right? In a hotel. So
oh yeah, it could be in a hotel for the first 3 days.
Yeah, man, things are getting a bit nuts. So cool. So today we're gonna do another one of these career episodes where we break down each fight. And the last episode we did was the Igor Zinoviev fight, which was a really, grueling fight in your career. It was the second loss that you had as well. And the kind of where I wanted to start, it was kind of where we left off, right? Because at the end of that fight, you said this was when you were having loads of doubts in your mind around whether you even want to still do this as a profession or just for fun in general anyway. And you kind of said that Egan's words kind of stuck with you a little bit. So for those who didn't see that episode, just remind people just sort of where you were in your head after that loss.
Yeah, after losing, for me, it was a big frustration because trained so hard. And I think it was like 44 seconds. Got knocked out, and I was like, all that training, I was so ready, and I felt like I wasn't sure. I got caught. I didn't think I did anything wrong, and I thought, man, is this even worth it? And as I'm having those, that big disappointment of letting myself down, walking out of the ring, I remember Egan looking over at me and telling me, because Egan used to just do jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And I got Egan into jiu-jitsu, and I had the transition from to MMA. And I remember Egan telling me on the way back, we weren't even back at the locker room. We were walking on the way. I remember him telling me, man, there's too much to cover in MMA. We gotta go back to jiu-jitsu. And at that moment when he said that, I remember feeling that, like, oh yeah, too much to freaking cover in MMA. I gotta go back to jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that. So I was at that spiral actually in the movement of actually feeling like I'm gonna be hanging up those MMA gloves.
Wow. So obviously you decided not to do that, but there was quite a quick turnaround with the fights as usual as well. So the fight with Igor was in July, and then this fight with Mushtaq was October. So kind of what changed in that time frame, right, to make you suddenly go, do you know what, I'm going to give it another go?
Well, see, the good thing about this whole thing was before my first loss to Joe Estes,
Mm-hmm.
I had already made up my mind that I was going to try and do what I can in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
If I was still on the movement of just fighting one at a time to get the experience and get the, get that practice of controlling my nerves, I would have been done. But the fact that I made an agreement with myself that I was going to, give it everything I got, I just felt that, I lost those 2 fights. Igor's one was really discouraging because it was 44 seconds and I was probably one of the best shapes of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that, making that, giving up on myself or giving up on the career or sort of making a career change. I just felt that, I didn't want to have any regrets. So like I always said that baseball is 3 strikes and you're out, yeah. So Joe Estes was 1 strike, Igor was a 2nd strike, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do it again until I get the 3rd strike. So but what many people don't know is before racquetball and before fighting, my big dream was baseball. I wanted to be a baseball player.
Really?
Played
No
baseball
way.
all through high school. Yeah, played baseball all through high school. Actually tried out, walked on the University of Hawaii team, didn't make it. And that's when I decided to go to racquetball. So yeah, baseball was always my dream sport, and it was always that you try something and 3 strikes and you're out. So
Yeah.
I felt I got to give myself one more chance,
Yeah.
and that's how talked to Sayama and
Mhm.
wanted to get back in the ring as soon as possible,
Mhm.
and
And
decided to October, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, in your book, you kind of sort of mentioned that Sayama and a few of the other and Egan kind of and a few others were kind of like leaning you towards like maybe taking an easier fight to sort of get jump back into things, right? But you picked out Mushtaq Abdullah, who obviously probably a lot of casual fans, a lot of people aren't that quite aware of who he was, and because he had such a short stint in the sport, right? But talk a bit about what made you want to fight Mushtaq, and B, kind of just about, I don't know, he seemed this was such a strong wrestling background, and he seemed huge. It seemed like a way tougher challenge than anyone else you could have faced potentially.
Yeah, well, for me, I wanted to know if I was gonna continue, if it was, I was actually cut out for the sport.
Mhm.
So taking an easy fight for me wasn't going to really answer the question. I just felt that to really answer the question, I had to take another hard one
Mhm.
and see how I could handle it, see how I could deal with it. And I didn't want to take someone that I thought I could beat, because then it wouldn't prove anything to me.
Mhm.
And I figured that if I take an easy fight, okay, I win. I still won't convince myself that I'm made out for this. Say take another easy fight and I win, I still want to have that question
Mhm.
until I fight someone that really pushes me to my limits, or someone that really supposed to be really good. I thought that it wouldn't really convince me, so I figured, why waste time? Why take some easy fights and prolong the career that, if it's going to end and I'm not cut out for it, I'd rather know in the next fight than wait and prolong it 3 fights. So
Mhm.
um, when I was thinking who I could fight, and the in that whole Vale Tudo Japan,
Mhm.
what stood out in my head was Mustafa Abdul. And why
Mhm.
Mustafa Abdul stood out was because he fought Sanai Kikuta, and
Mhm.
Kikuta was one of the top fighters in Japan. He actually beat Egan in a jacket jiu-jitsu match.
Mhm.
So Kikuta was a real, tough, strong guy, and good submissions. And I remember specifically when Kikuta fought Mustaf.
Mhm.
Kikuta had Mustaf in a real deep knee bar, and Mustaf just sucked it up. Took the, I mean, Kikuta was bridging as much as he can. Probably did pop his knee a little bit, because
Mhm.
those submissions, even an armbar, you get your joints popped or your ligaments stretched.
Mhm.
So he sucked it up and then started, with the other leg, started keeling Kikuta in the face. And there was this ferocity that Mustaf had, that I felt that you have to beat up Mustaf to win.
Mhm.
He wasn't the type of guy that's gonna, be a sportsman, try to get a win and hug you and hold you. He's trying to come to hurt you,
Mhm.
and to beat him, you would have to really beat him up.
Mhm.
So I felt that someone like Mustaf was someone that would really push me to my limits, and not, it wasn't someone that I could say like, oh yeah, I think I could beat him. I mean, Musaf was someone that would be a big challenge, and for me, to say that I know I could beat him would probably be an artificial sense of security. To be honest, it would be like, I don't know, I don't know who's gonna win. I mean,
Mhm.
as ferocious as he was, the way he smashed Kikuta, which Kikuta is a very good fighter.
Mhm.
I was like, man, I don't know. This guy might actually be better than me. This guy might be tougher than me, but let's find out. So yeah, I wanted a fight that was going to push me to my limits again.
You know what's crazy is that that mentality of what you're just saying there, it feels like it doesn't really exist that much in modern day MMA, really, that much. Everyone's thinking about the money, everyone's thinking about the big fights. It feels, I don't know, the whole like, I want to fight the best guy I can fight right now. It's like, when they say people are ducking like Chimaev and stuff, there's only a few fighters you really hear that sort of say like, I want to fight that guy because he looks like the hardest guy to fight. So I don't know. It's hopefully we see it more. I'd like to see that more with
Well,
fighters rather than.
in this day and age, MMA has become a sport, and it's
Mm,
it's about winning, and it's about looking good, and it's about getting sponsors. It wasn't about testing yourself. I
mhm,
think the fighters nowadays would rather fight opponents that they could win to give them a title shot, to get a belt, to get
mhm,
that name, to create a legacy, and to be in the history of the sport. I think the fighters nowadays are more concerned about, you hear them also. Even Daniel Cormier talks about the GOT, who's the greatest of
mm,
all time. And then they talk about my legacy. It's like there's so much material stuff involved. They
mm,
talk about their supporting their family. I want to fight because I have a child now. It's giving me more incentive to train harder. It's like there's so much things that people fight for nowadays that are targeted towards a goal to either financially help themselves or buy them a house or create this legacy that they'll never be forgotten.
mhm,
You never hear about them challenging their personal goals. You never hear about them
mm,
saying that they want to build their spirit or they want to test their grit and their heart. So it's just a really different age now. And
mm,
you know guys like me, Mark Coleman, Hoist Gracie,
mhm,
uh, Don Fry, all these guys that fought back in that day. you know Money wasn't a thing.
mm,
Money is not something that we brought after our career. We're still poor guys right now, but you know I think we're millionaires in our soul. We've tested ourselves,
mhm,
and our wallets aren't as fat, but I mean, I think the security we have in our soul and our spirit is a lot bigger than most of the people nowadays. So, it's I think it's just a day and age that we grew up in. So yeah, for me, I don't think I've ever picked a fight that I thought I could win. I always picked a fight that I thought would push me to a fear level that I would have to grow and be stronger as a man to overcome.
mhm,
Too about Mustafa too,
mhm,
I realized that when I picked Mustafa, he was a Iranian wrestler, and back in that day, Iran had tough wrestlers. I
mhm,
think still today, Iran has one of the top wrestling teams. So for me, my takedowns, I wasn't a wrestler. I never really did wrestling, so my takedown defense wasn't that good. So there was a chance that I was going to end up on the bottom, and the two fights that I lost, Joe Estes and Igor Zinoviev, I was on the bottom.
mhm,
So for me, to have that type of fighter that probably going to put me in that my vulnerable position that I've been defeated twice in, it just added another element of fighting someone that really was going to create adversity for myself. So, you know, yeah, I wasn't fighting a striker. I was fighting a jiu-jitsu guy that couldn't strike at all. I wasn't
mhm.
fighting a striker that had no ground. I was actually fighting someone that actually was probably the worst matchup for me
Yeah.
in my ability and my style to be able to beat and overcome. He was
Mhm,
probably a very, very bad style for me of being such a strong, aggressive wrestler.
mhm.
But
How
that's the one I had to pick. That's the one I had to pick to, you know, make that final decision and see if I'm going to hit that last pitch or I'm going to strike out and change careers.
Yeah, yeah, gamble it all. That's cool, man. Such a cool approach. So, how were the nerves compared to say in the last fight with Zinoviev, if you were coming off the loss to Joe, right? So, did you find the nerves sort of doubled based on sort of the fact that you felt like the stakes were even higher? It was potentially strike free.
No, the nerves for me, if anything, was I knew that this fight was going to decide the movement of my career. I really did want to pursue fighting, but I didn't want to pursue something that I wasn't cut out for.
Mhm,
Yeah, Cowgirl. So for me, it was almost the pressure that I had knowing that after this fight, it could be a whole career change. I did enjoy fighting. I put everything into the fighting. I lived fighting. I've lived MMA. Everything I did was about MMA. And to actually, in one night, have all that change was pretty nerve-wracking. And, I've always said that the celebration you see after the fight is actually the insecurity that the fighter had during the fight or about the fight.
Mm.
And if you notice, in my fight, after I beat Mushtaq, I flexed up in the air and I screamed, and that just showed you how much anxiety and how much insecurity I had about that fight, that I really didn't know if I was going to win that. So the celebration of actually winning showed the insecurity I had about winning. So that was a really for me, it was a career decision, whether I was going to change my careers or not. And that fight, a lot of pressure knowing that this fight was going to be do or die.
Yeah, it seemed like you kind of made it yourself, put your back up against the wall, right? Like no one else is sort of putting this pressure on you, put it on yourself, which is a different approach. So let's get into specifics of the fight, right? So this fight is impossible to track down. I've seen a few clips from it, but I've never seen it in its entirety, right? But I know it's pretty short. There was a bit of a weirdness, right? Because I mean, you thought you got the win initially at first, and then the ref didn't see that, right? But talk me through what happened there.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was weird is that MMA was still in its growing process. It was still not they didn't have the rules set down. A lot of associations had different times, have different weight classes. They had different rules. So with the Shuto rule, they had this rule that was a standing 8 count. So once you knock someone down, they get a standing 8 count. And Mushtaq has fought in other leagues, other associations that didn't have that. So the first punch I connected with Mushtaq was he went down. And I think his association that he used to fight in, there was no standing 8 count. So if there's no standing 8 count, when you go down, if you get knocked down on the ground, the guy can jump on you and kick you in the face, stomp you, punch your face, knee your head, So I think Mushtaq, when it was getting knocked down, just was pretty much, I'm done. And he started tapping the mat. But the Shuto ref made a mistake, because tapping, no matter what situation you're in or what part of the fight it is, when the person taps, the fight's over. But the Shuto ref was just so engulfed in the 10 count, the 8 count rule, that as soon as he saw Mushtaq go down, he started at 8 count. And I was on top of Mushtaq and I saw him tap. And for me, it's over. So I'm like, okay, it's done. The fight's over. So I went into the corner and kind of raised my hands in the air. And when I turned around, I noticed that Mushtaq was trying to get up and the ref was still counting for him. I said, wait a minute, it's over. And when the 8 count ended, I remember the referee letting us fight. I'm looking at the ref like, wait. You can see the video. I'm looking at the ref like, he tapped. I'm telling the ref, he tapped. And the ref kind of looks at me like, what? And right there for me, I'm thinking like, okay, I had him on the ground. He was dizzy. And the more if I talk to the ref longer, he's recovering. So fuck, I just go back to the fight. So I went back to the fight. And in that fight, what happened was I connected with the next right I threw at him. I mean, he threw a huge looping right of me, and it was such a big roundhouse punch. I hit him with a right, and then he fell to the ground. And this time, I didn't want to get off of him. I saw him tapping again. He tapped again. So instead of getting off on my own power, I waited until the ref called the fight. So, I felt, wow, this is so unfair. I had to beat him twice. He tapped twice.
Yeah. It must have, I guess you kind of saw it as like a mental victory, right? That you beat him twice, essentially. And so
yeah. So I think when he got hit, I think he's never been hit like that. So he freaked out and tapped. And I think when he got up and the ref was telling him to fight again, I don't think he was ready. I don't think he was mentally prepared for it anymore. I think he was already defeated. He threw his big haymaker to just, maybe like a do or die punch. And the next shot I hit him with, he just said, I'm done, man. He fell to the ground and started tapping. And, I stayed on top of him. And it was a big lesson for me because I realized that I'm a fighter. I'm not a referee. I'm not a doctor. I don't make any determinations on whether the fight should be stopped or whether this guy is done or he's incapable of defending himself. My job is to fight. My job is to hurt my opponent before he hurts me. My job is to continue to hurt my opponent and put him out of commission until the referee tells me it's over. And I felt that when he tapped the first time, I stopped. I got off him on my own because I thought it was over. But that's not my job. My job isn't to determine whether he's tapping or not. My job isn't to determine that the fight's over so I get off of him. My job is to continue to hit him and hurt him until I get put off by the referee. That's the only person in the ring that has that power to determine whether the fight's over or not. So that's when I decided in my head that my job is to hurt. My job is not to stop the fight and protect the fighter. It's the referee's job. And that's when I decided that I'm going to go on and I'm going to go and try and hurt my opponent until the referee physically pulls me off.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think anyone can really argue with that logic, right? That's what the referee's there for. So,
yeah, I mean, for someone like Mushtaq, man, I had to beat him twice.
Yeah.
And I should actually have another win on my record.
Yeah. I don't think he ever came back to MMA after that fight. I think he did more. I think he lived in Australia, from what I can see, and I think he did some more wrestling. I think he did like the Commonwealth Games and things like that. So I think he went back to that sport. I didn't. Yeah, there's not much.
Yeah,
it's
maybe maybe it's just I think the hits that he took, I think it kind of freaked him out. Like, holy shit, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And he went. I think he probably just went back to his bread and butter, which was wrestling.
So fair enough. You mentioned obviously the post-fight celebration. You really felt like you let it all go because of how much sort of was going into this fight. Any other sort of post-fight thoughts that you had? Like, obviously that kind of sealed the deal for you that this was going to be your career, right?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So. I remember screaming. I mean, Nakai Yuki was in my corner because we used to train at the same gym. So he was at that time. He was still in the corner for me, and I remember him crying. There's videos of him hugging me and crying in the ring because he knew also. I was like that big secret Shuto fighter, big heavyweight fighter is like brought ground to the Shuto fighters, and I'm like that big Shuto big brother, yeah. And so to see, to think that for Nakai to think that I was going to retire, I was going to give it up if I didn't win this, I think scared them. Their big brother, the one who taught them the ground and brought all this jiu-jitsu to Shuto, I think it scared them to think that I was not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So I remember after I won, I remember I remember looking over and Nakai was pretty much crying in the ring with his hands in the air too. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty huge. I think it was a huge win for me because I think that just not me, even Egan and even the Shuto gym, Sayama, they all knew that this was actually a make or break. So it was a big weight lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, okay, I gotta win the next one. I'm gonna quit. I'm not made out for this. I knew right there I'm made out for it. I just had a couple bad fights, but I knew that this MMA thing was something that I did want to pursue and work harder at.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, yeah, it's a fight I really want to see in its entirety, but hopefully one day it'll get released somewhere. I think sometimes with these fights they get sort of put on the internet and they disappear and then you find them again. But
I'll go try to look on the internet because you know where I noticed I found a lot of the good highlights of that fight is in the highlight reels. When people put highlight reels of me that have accumulation of things, that fight's in it a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll try to look at that and try to send you the clips of it.
Yeah. No, it's just cool. I've seen, like I said, I've seen bits of stuff, but it'd be cool just to see the whole event just to see what happened. But speaking of big events, there's obviously a big UFC this weekend. We're not going to sort of go through the whole card, but I'm just really keen to know if you've got a prediction for the main event, which is obviously Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira.
I mean, Poirier and Oliveira, I think, they both have the ability to beat each other. I don't know. For some reason, I feel that Oliveira is going to be too strong. I think his game is a lot more well-rounded. The striking wise, I think Poirier might be a lot sharper on the striking, but Oliveira creates enough of a danger that he could end the fight in one punch. And the thing that I think really helps Oliveira is, as far as the ground, if they go to the ground, I think Oliveira is a level above Dustin on the ground. Yeah, so with that, definitely. That insecurity of going to the ground with Oliveira might affect Poirier's striking. Because Oliveira's striking is top notch too. I mean, he's dangerous as a striker. So for me, odds wise, it's one of these fights that you pretty much hate anyone to lose, because Poirier and Oliveira are such class acts and such good guys. But for me, if I had to pick, just the fact that Oliveira is just as dangerous on the feet as Poirier, maybe not as accurate, but just as powerful, and the fact that his ground I believe, is a lot better than Poirier. I mean, if I had to bet on which one would win, I'd say Oliveira has better percentages, but on any given night, it's like a coin flip on who's going to win. Yeah, but I would, if I had to pick one, I'd say Oliveira. How about you?
Do you know what's weird? I'm picking Oliveira as well, and I thought that you might have gone Dustin, because for some reason Oliveira is the underdog. When I've looked at the betting odds a couple of days ago, Oliveira was quite a heavy underdog, and I was like, really? I thought it would have been even for both guys, but I don't know. Dustin does look great.
I better have Sarah look at her betting app and see if Oliveira is an underdog. That's a good underdog bet, I believe. Who you got for the women?
Oh, I don't pick
Amanda Nunes and Pena.
I don't pick against Nunes. I've been saying Nunes. I've been singing Nunes praises since the first Miesha Tate fight, and I would said this person's going to be the one that's going to be the champ, and then obviously went on, knocked out Rousey and all that. So, yeah, I've been singing her praises for a long time, man. What about you? Who have you got for Pena?
Yeah, same like you. I mean, I don't think Pena has a chance. I love her confidence though, and how she really believes that she actually can beat him. And I mean, because A beats B and B beats C doesn't mean A is going to beat C. But with that said, Zingano beat Nunes. Pena beat Zingano, so that creates a little bit of excitement. The fact that Pena's so confident, I think Pena is powerful, and the way, as hard as Amanda Nunes hits, from what I hear, I think it's going to be a big thing when Amanda lands that first shot. To see how Pena's confidence and how her, if she'll be able to keep her strategy and her, her style. Because it seemed, even Miesha said that, when she got hit by Nunes, she was like, holy shit, I've never been hit this hard. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say Nunes 100%, man.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against her, right? So,
I'm excited for it. For it.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.